Hey, what's going on, all? Happy to see you here for part 2 of the discussion, who is stronger, Zoro or Sanji? To reiterate, in part 1, where we left off, I gave solid evidence for Zoro having a slight edge above Sanji moving forward, given the fact that they faced equally strength opponents, but Zoro having that immense handicap. That being the case, let's move right into part 2. Moving forward, we have the Whiskey Peacock. This Western theme arc is centered completely around Roronoa Zoro and showcasing what he's capable of doing. What do we see Zoro doing? Well, Zoro goes up against 100 Baroque work agents. Now, there could be an assumption that these Baroque work agents are fodder. However, that would be disrespectful to Zoro, considering that there's 100 of them. So yes, this is a huge obstacle. Going up against 100 pirate hunters in Baroque works, a known organization for their pirate hunting, it is an obstacle. So what do we see Zoro doing? Zoro first disappears in plain sight in front of 200 eyes. No one sees where this man goes. Then he appears in the center, forcing a minimal of 8 people to shoot one another, completely dodging bullets, moving at an astonishing speed, showing us great feats of speed. Afterwards, we see Zoro showing off some intelligence, setting traps constantly, casually against Baroque work agents, moving left, right, making fools of Baroque work agents. We also see Zoro soaring through the air, moving from one building to another with ease, flying, gliding. Zoro then makes quick work of Mr. 8, Mr. 9, Miss Wednesday, Miss Monday. On top of that, he has a confrontation with his captain. Now, I do want to side highlight that this is the first arc we see Zoro being compared to the captain of the ship. People confusing him for the captain, or people saying, this is what a crew member is like, what is the captain like? So given that being the first instance of that, and Zoro going up against his captain, I don't think that that was a coincidence. I think that Oda deliberately planned that to highlight that Zoro was on equal strength with Luffy at this point. They were going blow for blow in their confrontation. Now, the confrontation between Zoro and Luffy isn't completed, so I'm not going to say that, yeah, because of that confrontation, Zoro had some growth as a fighter. However, his confrontation with the Baroque work agents is definitely a huge obstacle and is definitely an example of Zoro taking one more step ahead of Sanji. The proof is in the pudding. Sanji does absolutely nothing this arc, takes a nap while Zoro's out, and basically saves the crew from being captured, from being destroyed. So what we see from Zoro this arc is telling of his speed, his intelligence, and his physical strength. So obviously, I'm not going to include the fact that there is a contextual clue to Zoro being equal to his captain as proof that he is. I'm also not going to include that him going up against his captain blow for blow is proof that Zoro and Luffy were on an equal level at this point. However, his confrontation with Baroque work speaks for itself, and Sanji's absence is why we can say that Zoro took another step ahead of Sanji moving forward after this. Before we move on to the next arc, I do want to highlight that Mr. 8 does say that the higher the number is on, or I guess I should say the lower the number is in Baroque works, the more powerful the opponent. So Mr. 8 is stronger than Mr. 8 is stronger than Mr. 9. Mr. 7 is stronger than Mr. 8. So that being the case, let's move right on to the next arc. In the Drum Island arc, we get more of a shine on Sanji, with Zoro being completely absent from the arc in terms of fighting and in terms of the arc's progression. Sanji, however, dislocates his spine, which is kind of sad because we can't really pull anything from his confrontations, what little confrontations he does have towards the end of the arc. When he's going up against the dude with the sticky afro attack, he gets embarrassingly stuck by one of them when he could have easily dodged. However, we're going to give him a pass considering that his spine was dislocated. The poor dude couldn't move as quick because of his injury. Also, Sanji does come through with his intelligence by coming up with a plan to use Luffy and Chopper in that situation, taking control of the combat. So we do see Sanji using combat intelligence in this arc. However, as far as speed, physical strength, endurance go, we don't see anything. We see absolutely nothing. So, moving forward, do I think Sanji grew after this arc? It's really hard to say when he just came up with one quick on-the-moment plan against Whopper, or the main villain, the main antagonist of the Drum Island arc. So that being the sad case of Sanji in the Drum Island arc, especially after what we see from Zoro in the Whiskey Peacock, we need to move forward into the... In the Alabaster Arc, we finally get to see a substantial confrontation from Sanji himself. He goes up against Baroque Works' Mr. 2. At the beginning of this fight, Sanji and Mr. 2 are on even ground. However, Mr. 2 uses his Devil Fruit ability to his advantage to overcome Sanji and delivers an immense barrage of blows that Sanji does not return, Sanji showing us a good amount of endurance. Then Sanji, using his combat intelligence, comes through and overcomes Mr. 2's Devil Fruit. Now they're back on even ground. Mr. 2 then comes through with a swan attack that he likens to that of bullets. This is where we see Sanji using his speed, what he is known for. Sanji dodging, not taking those hits from the swan attacks. Then Sanji delivers his own barrage of blows, showing us a good amount of physical strength, and then with the finishing blow, paralyzing his opponent, completely immobilizing Mr. 2. So, was this a substantial obstacle for Sanji? Absolutely. Sanji himself even states that he had to go all out to defeat Mr. 2. And Sanji walks away, still standing with broken ribs. Amazing endurance being showed by Sanji at the end of the fight. Now we get Zoro. In Zoro's fight, we see Zoro easily outmaneuvering Mr. 1. I would say that the only thing Mr. 1 had above Zoro at this point in the story was the steel body, was the endurance that Zoro couldn't cut through. However, Mr. 1 is no joke. When Zoro does eventually take on a hit of Mr. 1's, he does say that he is close to death just after the first hit. After that first hit from Mr. 1, Zoro then lifts a house with his physical strength alone. He lifts a house from the debris after almost coming close to death from Mr. 1's attack. He lifts a house and throws it on Mr. 1. Afterwards, the fight commences again. Zoro coming through with some moves but not being able to cut Mr. 1. Mr. 1 countering with a barrage of 3 moves that leaves Zoro in the dirt. Afterwards, Mr. 1 delivers another devastating hit on Zoro, again pushing Zoro's durability to the absolute limit of where it can go. When Zoro finally comes out of the debris, here's where we put our tinfoil hats on. I'm going to make a little bit of an aside here from the fight. Zoro, tinfoil hats, everybody ready? Zoro shows us what could be the first instance of Haki being used in the story. Zoro knows where his blade is after the hit from Mr. 1. Zoro begins to sense the aura of the things around him. Now, it has been stated in the recent arc of One Piece that observation Haki is a product of sensing auras around you. So, this tinfoil hat is slowly becoming a construction worker's hat because we are building the foundations of observation Haki right before our eyes here with the confrontation with Mr. 1. Roronoa Zoro showing us what Haki is. Let's take it off because it is not confirmed by Oda that this was the first instance of observation Haki. However, Zoro does learn how to cut steel in this fight by sensing the aura of the things around him, the breath of inanimate objects. Extremely impressive. We see Zoro growing right before our eyes. We don't have to wait for the next arc to see how far Zoro's grown. We see Zoro grow in the middle of the fight. We see Zoro state himself that he has grown stronger by the end of the fight. So where does that leave these two characters side by side at the end of this arc? Well, Sanji does show an array of combat feats that are all equally impressive. However, Zoro does exponentially grow in the middle of his fight, which could be a product of him having a huge confrontation in Whiskey Peak. His growth continued and bled over into his fight with Mr. One. So who do I think grew more this arc? Alone, standing alone? I think it is fair to say that Zoro grew more at the end of this arc. We see him exponentially grow. We see him go to his limits, not being able to move anymore. Now, I've heard Sanji fanboys use this arc in this example for their argument, say, well, Sanji walked away with broken ribs and he was fine, but Zoro wasn't able to move, which is not a valid argument, because the harder the obstacle, the more you're going to grow in the future as a fighter. Zoro was not able to move at the end of this fight. Zoro went up against someone stronger than Mr. 2, Mr. 1. It was stated by Mr. 8, the higher the number, the stronger the opponent. So, moving forward after this arc, it is inarguable that Zoro will be stronger than Sanji after this arc. The bleeding over of Whiskey Peak and his fight with Mr. 1 all leads credence to that, and it is all proved in the story. At the end of this arc, both characters did demonstrate amazing feats of strength. However, we see Sanji catching up to Zoro this arc. Zoro was dodging bullets in Whiskey Peak. Sanji is just now dodging attacks that are equal to bullets, and barely dodging attacks that are equal to bullets. So we see Sanji bridging the gap with him and Zoro that was established in Whiskey Peak. However, Zoro pushes himself to his absolute limits in his fight and lives. So his body, after nutrition and after rest, is going to be even stronger than it was before, if that's even imaginable. And of course it is. So that is the end of the video. That is it. Moving forward from Alabasta, Zoro has once again stepped out an edge against Sanji. The proof is in the manga, and I have laid it out for you. That being it, and that being all for this video, leave me a like or a dislike if you're enjoying this series, if you hate it, if you think it's boring, if you think I'm entertaining. Leave a comment if you see something that I do not see, if you have qualms with the way that I'm breaking things down. Subscribe to join the crew today to get more content, to follow the series, to get more One Piece related content, manga content, anime content, and I will see you all in part 3, baby. We're going to be going over Skypiea as a standalone. So, part 3, hope to see you there. Have a beautiful day.